When was the last time we slept 3 times in 12 hours? I grinned. Since the babies were born, this empty nest thing has its advantages. Amy snuggled up to me and I hugged my wife of 20 years. I still miss the girls. But it feels really good to be here with you the last 22 years, flat through my mind dating and finally marrying Amy. Then came the girls a year apart as we became a family. The girls went from dolls to bikes, then to soccer and boyfriends, then to driver's licenses and graduation. Suddenly they were hundreds of miles away in college, and Amy and I were an empty family. I kissed the top of her head, baby. The last 20 years have flown by like a blur. I want us to take advantage of this time and be a couple, again like we were 2 decades ago, Amy giggled. Well, we're not newlyweds, but there are plenty of things we can do to keep the fire burning. I felt blissfully satisfied as I gently stroked her hand. I loved the feel of her soft skin, and she purred in appreciation. I think I was about to fall asleep when Amy lifted her head and kissed me on the lips. Tim, making love to you is one of my favorite joys in life, and I know you feel the same way. We're good together, and I never want that to change. I sleepily mumbled, "Back, you make me very happy. I'm lucky to have you." She leaned over and kissed me. Agan, what we have together is wonderful, and I want us to always be together. I want you to help me spoil our grandchildren when they come along and be there for me when we get old too. Sleepy to answer. I just nodded and pulled her against me. She kissed me lightly on the lips and I felt her hand move lower. But before the grandchildren take over all of our lives, I want to have a new adventure. I want some more thrills before we become grandparents and sink into old age. Slowly her words made their way into my consciousness and pulled me out of the dim fog of impending slumber and raised one eyebrow in unasked question, kid. I know it's very selfish, but I want to have one more little adventure before I get too old to explore new things. As my thoughts floated back to the surface of consciousness, a distant alarm rang. What had she said? Something about the last adventure, but the way she said it, why did it bother me? I love adventure. But what kind of adventure was she planning for us? I opened my eyes. I saw her beautiful face framed by a wild mop of blonde hair. Her eyes were filled with concern. As she studied me, I started stroking her hand again. An adventure, what kind of adventure did you have planned for us? Well, she leaned in and kissed me again. Like I said, it's a little selfish. The alarm in my head was now loud and clear. So this adventure is for you and not for us. She wrinkled her nose slightly and replied, well, yes, but I think you can have an adventure separate from mine. To that alarm clock alerting me was pumping my body with adrenaline. I braced myself against the headboard of the bed, forcing Amy to move away from me, fully focused. I met my gaze. With Amy, stop beating around the bush. Tell me what you mean by adventure, Amy. Pulled away slightly. It's okay. I didn't mean to upset you. I'm not upset yet. Okay? I told you that Dan from sales was bragging about the sailboat he and his brother Rob bought last month. Susan, my cubicle neighbor, went sailing with Dan and Rob for the weekend. She said it was great and that she wanted to go again. I say it was fun, and she must have told Dan because he asked us both to go swimming next weekend. I stared at my wife. So some guy I've never met asked my wife to go away with him for the weekend? Oh, and with Labor Day on Monday, it's going to be a 3-day weekend. I said that's selfish. I have pictures of the boat. If you want to see, she's very pretty, and Susan said she had a great time sailing around the lake. Amy, Susan is single and you are married. Don't you see the problem with that? No, baby. She reached out to touch my face, and I jerked my head away, but it's just one weekend. Just one last adventure. I jumped up from the bed. No way in hell, forget it. I will not let you play the naughty student and spend the weekend on a sailboat having fun with your coworker. I didn't say anything about sleeping with him. Come on, what the hell makes you think these guys would invite 2 girls to spend the weekend on their boat? Did Susan tell you what she did with them when she left, LOL? Amy looked down at the bed. Yes, she'd had sex with them. But that doesn't mean I should have. Oh, and her story about floating around lying on the deck and then sleeping with her brothers has nothing to do with you wanting to Bether with her, Tim. It's just one weekend. You can spend this weekend however you want. And then we'll just put it behind yous and forget about it, ignoring the fact that you've already got an adventure planned and I'll only have a few days to try and figure it out. I'm not interested in having an adventure with anyone, but you could ask me to rent a boat and we could have our own adventure on the lake, but it's not about the boat, is it? The real adventure is spending the weekend in the company of two young studs, babe. I I'm sorry, I think I was just caught up in the excitement of Susan's story. It sounded like such a grand adventure. I'm sorry, I'll tell them. I'm not going until 20 minutes ago. I was as happy as I've ever been in my life. When I held you in my arm, I was content, confident in our love and your commitment to our marriage. Now I know it was just a fantasy. I deluded myself into believing that you were ass content as devoted as I was, but I was wrong. No, it's not a fantasy. I really love you and always will. Please, baby. I'm so stupid. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Hell, I probably wasn't thinking at all. Please ignore everything. I said, please, baby. She said the last words to my back as I walked into our bathroom. I closed and locked the door, taking a shower. I washed off the remnants of our lovemaking. My mind was still numb from the shock of my wife's suggestion. How could she believe I would agree to such a betrayal when I came out? Amy was lying face down on the bed, sobbing. Loudly, she looked up at me, her beautiful face now flooded with tears. I sat down on the bed and she pulled herself up and pressed herself against me. I put my arms around her and stroked her until her SOB subsided. Amy, for 22 years. You made me believe in us and our relationship. I thought we wanted the same things, that we had the same desires. I never once doubted you until today. Oh my God. Tim, I'm so sorry. While you were in the shower, I was thinking about what I said, about what I'd planned. I asked myself how I would feel if this was your plan. If you had said that two girls had invited you to go swimming this weekend, I almost threw up. It's so selfish. Like I'm an immature teenager instead of a wife and mother. I'm so ashamed of myself and I feel so stupid. So what do we do now? Where do we go from here? How can I trust you? Knowing that you were totally willing to sleep with two other men, what does that say about our future together? Amy tried to hold back her sobs. I've ruined everything now. I can't even imagine how I could have thought that such an idea could be acceptable to any husband. Baby, I guess I was just taking you for granted. You've always been so reliable to me, and I think I just gave in to a silly, selfish whim. I completely neglected and disrespected you. I thought it would be fun. So I just neglected everything else, and that's so unlike me. This is all so unlike you. At least I've known and loved for the past 22 years. Baby, please tell me how I can make this right. I know it's all my fault, but what can I say or do to get you to give me a chance to make things right? I don't know, our marriage is seriously damaged. Everything I thought was true is now untrue. I'm just devastated. You say you just took me for granted. Is that my fault? Was I too loyal to you? Do you find me boring now? Oh my God, what have I done? No, it was all me. It was my brain noise, my selfish, childish indulgence, maybe. Just maybe. Your devotion was so strong that it allowed me to convince myself that it was okay to take your love for granted. But baby, that was so wrong. I should have treasured your devotion, not tried to take advantage of it. I just pray that you'll let me try to prove that. I realize the error of my ways and give me a chance to save our marriage. I don't know if her pleas convinced me or if I was just so desperate to believe that she was still the woman I'd loved for 22 years, but nodded. Amy threw herself into my arms, sobbing and kissing me. Call Susan and tell her to tell the boys you're not going. And Amy, promise me you'll stay away from Dan at work, either you or Susan or both of you. Let him know that it's okay to invite you to spend the weekend with him. You need to let everyone know that you would never do that. Maybe I should think about going to work for your sister at her bakery. We don't need the extra money and she could use the help. It would be their responsible thing to do. An adult, mature, unselfish, responsible thing to do. Amy said, smiling. Epilogue. I thought about what Amy had done for quite a while. I couldn't bring myself to believe that our 22 years together should be ruined because of one selfish plan that she ultimately discarded. I was still very hurt by her disrespect, but forced myself to give her a chance to make amends. It took some time, but gradually, the doubts generated by Amy faded away. She loved working at the bakery until she retired to spend more time with her grandchildren. I still have a year or two to go before I join her in retirement, once I retire. Amy says she's ready for a new adventure with me and no one else.